I never believed in things that lurked in the shadows, not until that night when my life changed forever. The air was heavy, the kind that pressed against your skin and made you feel as though the world was holding its breath. I had wandered farther than I should have, chasing a silence I thought would soothe me. Instead, I found something I could never have imagined. It began with a whisper. It was not the wind, I know that now. It was a voice, low and burning, yet oddly soft, curling into my ears like smoke. I froze, my heart thudding in my chest. The stories my grandmother used to tell me about the unseen flickered through my mind. They were warnings, cloaked as bedtime tales: never follow a whisper, never stare too long into the dark. But curiosity has always been my curse, and so I listened. And then I saw him. Or perhaps it's better to say, he revealed himself. His presence was fire and shadow, both dangerous and mesmerizing. His eyes glowed faintly, not like embers dying out, but like flames refusing to be tamed. For a moment, I forgot how to breathe. Fear should have seized me, yet it didn't. What I felt instead was a pull, a dangerous attraction that made no sense. Every instinct told me to run, but my feet would not obey. He spoke my name as though he had known it long before I was born. The sound of it carried weight, warmth, and a kind of promise I couldn't understand. I asked him who he was, though part of me already knew. He smiled, and in that small curve of his lips, I felt the truth: he was not of my world. A jinn, a being of fire, forbidden to even exist in the same breath as mine. Yet, in that moment, boundaries seemed meaningless. His presence felt like danger, yes, but also like belonging. I should have feared him. I should have turned away. But my heart betrayed me, racing not from terror, but from something I had never known before. He looked at me as though I was more than flesh and bone, as though he saw something hidden even from myself. That was our forbidden encounter, the spark of a story I never meant to begin. I didn't understand then that once fire touches the heart, it leaves nothing untouched. I didn't realize that night was only the beginning of something both terrifying and beautiful, something I could never escape. I thought I could forget him. I tried to convince myself that night was just a dream, a trick of my mind born from loneliness and fear. But forgetting was impossible, because he did not remain in the shadows. He came back. And with every encounter, something inside me began to shift, something I could neither fight nor deny. The first time his hand brushed mine, it felt like touching lightning. Not pain, not exactly, but an intensity that burned through my veins, leaving me trembling. His skin was warm, too warm, as though his very being carried the fire of another world. I should have recoiled, but instead, I longed for more. My heart, once steady and untouched, began to race at the thought of him. That was the moment I realized a flame had been lit within me. He spoke of his world, of fire and endless night skies, of freedom that was bound by ancient laws. He should not have been near me, and I should not have listened. Yet every word he spoke pulled me closer. It was as if my soul recognized him before my mind did, and no amount of reason could change that. I would lie awake at night, replaying the sound of his voice, the way his eyes glowed with both danger and tenderness. The strangest thing was not that I felt drawn to him, but that he seemed just as bound to me. A being of fire, a creature who should have looked at mortals as fragile, fleeting things, looked at me as though I was the only truth he had ever found. In his gaze, I was not ordinary, not weak, I was something worth defying his world for. That thought terrified me, but it also made my heart ache with a longing I had never known. I began to notice changes within myself. My body warmed in ways I could not explain, my dreams were filled with flames that did not consume but embraced. When he was near, I felt alive in a way that words could never capture. It was as though his fire had seeped into me, igniting a hidden part of my soul. The heart of fire had awakened inside me. It was not gentle, nor safe, but it was real. And I knew that once awakened, it could never be silenced again. I was no longer just myself, I was something more, something dangerous, something forever marked by him. It began quietly, like a secret carried on the wind. I would hear his voice when no one else was around, a low murmur that slipped into my thoughts as though it belonged there. At first, I thought I was imagining it, that my mind was replaying the memory of his words. But soon I realized these whispers were not echoes of the past, they were his. Somehow, across the unseen boundary that divided his world from mine, he was reaching for me. The whispers came most strongly at night. When the world was still and the veil between realms thinned, I could hear him as clearly as if he were standing beside me. His voice was like fire woven with smoke, soft, yet powerful enough to stir something deep inside me. He spoke of longing, of how the fire within him ached in my absence. He told me of his world, a realm carved from flame and shadow, vast and eternal, yet empty without me. And in return, I whispered back my fears, my hopes, and the strange truth that my heart had already chosen him, though everything in our worlds declared it forbidden. It felt dangerous, like walking a thin bridge suspended over an abyss. Each word exchanged was a step forward, fragile and trembling, yet impossible to turn back from. I began to crave those whispers, waiting for nightfall as though it were the only time I truly lived. In the daylight, I wore silence like armor, pretending to be the girl I once was, but inside I was no longer the same. I carried his voice with me like a hidden flame, burning quietly beneath my skin. Sometimes the whispers grew desperate. He warned me of those who would sense his bond with me, those who would tear us apart before it could bloom into something more. Other times, his words were soft confessions, filled with a tenderness that made me ache. I would close my eyes and imagine his hand in mine, his warmth surrounding me. For those fleeting moments, the distance between our worlds felt small. But no matter how close his voice drew me, there was always the reminder that we belonged to two realms that should never touch. The whispers were proof of a bond stronger than fear, yet fragile against the weight of destiny. And still, every time I heard him call my name in the quiet darkness, I answered, because I could not bear silence when I had already tasted the sound of his soul. Love is never simple, but loving him was like walking through fire while carrying my own beating heart in my hands. Each moment we shared was steeped in beauty, but shadowed by fear. His world and mine were not meant to cross, and every step closer we took felt like a defiance of fate itself. Yet how could I turn away when the very thought of him had become the rhythm of my life? The first trial was secrecy. I lived with the constant fear of being discovered, of someone noticing the way my eyes lit up when his whispers filled my nights, or the way warmth lingered on my skin after he had been near. My heart was heavy with the weight of a love I could not confess. To the world, he was a myth, a danger, a being to be feared. To me, he was the only truth I had ever known. The lies I told to protect us cut at me, but losing him would have destroyed me completely. Then came the trial of doubt. In the quiet hours, when I was alone, fear gnawed at me. What if this was all an illusion? What if I was nothing more than a fleeting fascination to a being who had existed for centuries? I questioned everything, his promises, his tenderness, even my own worth. He saw my weakness, and instead of anger, he gave me patience. "You are not a passing flame," he told me once. "You are the fire I did not know I was searching for." Those words burned deeper than fear, but still, the doubt never fully disappeared. The greatest trial, however, was the threat that hung over us both. His kind would not forgive his bond with a mortal, and my world would not understand the love I carried. Every shadow felt like a watchful eye, every silence like a warning. I began to live with my heart clenched, torn between the sweetness of his love and the terror of what might happen if we were caught. Yet even in fear, I could not let go. I chose him, again and again, despite the risks. Love and fear became two sides of the same coin, spinning endlessly inside me. And though the trials threatened to break me, I found a strange strength in them, because every hardship proved one thing, that our love was real, fierce, and worth every wound it carved into my soul. I used to think destiny was something written far beyond our reach, etched in stone by hands unseen. But now I know it is not so simple. Destiny is both a chain and a choice, and mine was forever altered the moment his fire touched my heart. The veil that separated our worlds had always been there, invisible but impenetrable. Yet with every whispered word, every stolen glance, we began to tear at its edges, as though love itself refused to obey the boundaries drawn by fate. There came a night when the veil between us trembled, shimmering like fragile glass. I felt it, the thinning of the barrier, as though his world was breathing against mine. His voice was no longer just a whisper, it was a presence, heavy and real, and when I reached out, I almost believed my fingers brushed his. My heart pounded with both terror and longing. I knew that crossing the veil was forbidden, yet I also knew it was inevitable. Something greater than fear was calling us forward. He told me then that his kind had spoken of this once, long ago, a prophecy hidden in flame and smoke. It spoke of a mortal whose soul would ignite with the fire of a jinn, a union neither world would accept, yet one that could not be undone. Hearing those words shook me to my core. Could it truly be me? A simple girl, chosen by fate to stand at the crossroads of two worlds? I wanted to deny it, to run from the weight of such a truth, but deep inside, I felt it. The fire within me had awakened for a reason. The veil shimmered again, and I realized destiny was no longer waiting, it was demanding. I stood there trembling, knowing that stepping beyond it meant leaving behind everything I had ever known. My family, my world, my safety. But staying meant living half a life, always yearning, always aching for the fire I could not hold. So I chose. Not because I was fearless, but because love gave me courage. I stepped forward, heart burning, and in that instant I felt the veil break around me like shattered glass. Light and flame engulfed me, and his hand finally closed around mine, real and steady. Destiny was no longer a chain, it was a path we would walk together. Beyond the veil, I was no longer just mortal. I was his, and he was mine, bound by a love strong enough to defy both worlds.